tell him about the time we faced them.
All right. Well, as I remember.
At Avenger headquarters.
Because united, the Avengers are strong.
Welcome to the Marvel D&C Evolution podcast with myself, Andy Stead.
And I'm Jarian Gibson.
And I'm Alex Stroud.
Good to be back, lads. Good to be back. How are we doing? How are you, Jarian? All right?
Doing good. Ready to see what Hawkeye brings us.
Yeah. And you didn't get blown away by any storms?
Nope. We're good here. Other parts of the metro area had some, worse parts of it, and some trees down, that kind of stuff, and some fences down. But luckily here, not too much damage. So.
Excellent. Everyone worries here when it goes to sort of 45 miles an hour. That's really windy over here, but that'd be nothing where you are, would it? It's I'm sure I saw on the news it was like 90 mile an hour winds or something.
Yep, 90 miles plus in some areas here. So yeah, lost some
That's
power,
insane.
but everyone's good here.
Good. And hopefully everybody else that's in your area that's listening, or everybody, not just people that are listening, are all good. Alex, how are you?
Good. I'm excited for episode 6 of Hawkeye.
Yeah, who's not? Who's not? Who's not? So we and that's our prime reason for this episode, to chat about episode 5 of Hawkeye. A little sort of not necessarily disclaimer, but a little mini warning. Obviously, we at the time of recording, we have all seen Spider-Man: No Way Home. We're not going to purposefully spoil Spider-Man: No Way Home in this episode. There's obviously things that we certainly won't need to speak about in this episode, but there might be one or two smaller things that may happen or may sort of carry over between the two. So we sort of, we will try and not be blatant, but if it does sort of slip out, then we apologize in advance for any kind of crossover spoilers that could potentially happen. But yeah, so Hawkeye episode 5, we was running on the back of Yelena turning up and handing out a bit of a beating to, well, all three of them really. They all sort of fought each other, didn't they, in episode 4? And we got that the sort of to see a little bit more of Yelena in episode 5, and I think the thing that stuck out for me really, and the thing that I'm really looking forward to going forward, is seeing her and Kate's relationship develop, because obviously kind of like new Black Widow, new Hawkeye, that kind of dynamic, but the two of them and their dialogue together in episode 5, in that little scene where they're sitting down in Kate's flat, was well, I say their dialogue, it was basically just Yelena talking at Kate. But
Hey, Bishop.
Kate Bishop, at Kate Bishop, yeah. I like that as well. I like how Kate then turned around and goes, "Do you keep calling me by my whole name just to point out that you know my whole name?" And she's like, Yes, I do. But yeah, I really liked their relationship, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that going forward. And I'd like to see, we had Fred with an agree or disagree on the group this week, saying that Kate and Yelena should get their own show. And I sort of turned around and was like, well, I don't necessarily agree or disagree, but I can see them being almost front and center in an Avengers team in the future. Yep. So I don't know what you guys felt about their particular relationship, just before we get talking about the show as a whole.
No, I think it's interesting, dynamic, and that coffee chat table scene type thing where they had. I think that's setting up for more down the road for them, and you kind of saw some of that at the end of the episode too, as well.
Mm.
Yeah, and I don't know if Kate Bishop necessarily needs her own project, but I would totally just make her like almost like one of the leading members of the Young Avengers. You know what I'm saying? Like one of the founding members, make it one of those things where she's one of the ones that helps pull everybody together and helps kind of weave the team together.
Well, there's that rumor about her showing up in Quantumania, and maybe that is a cameo for her to recruit Cassie Lang, aka Stature.
Yeah. It's they say how old she is, don't they, in the program?
Yeah, she's in college age.
Yeah, I think they say around like 22 or something like that.
I'm sure she says Clint asks her,
Yeah.
Doesn't he? I'm sure he says how old are you, and she says, I think she does say 22. Yeah, so she is fairly young. How old do we think Yelena is? Is Yelena older than that? I'm sure we could probably work out how old Yelena is.
Well, not counting for this. Well, you have to count for the snap too.
Well,
They could, I would say Yelena's probably mid to late 20s.
So would you say probably like she's probably like what, like 5 years younger than Natasha, maybe originally before the snap?
Yeah.
So she's maybe like
5 or
10
6 years
younger than Natasha now, I guess.
Yeah.
When she died. So
yeah, 35. Maybe Natasha's 35. Yeah, she's
Yeah.
probably or she was ish. Just again before we get stuck right into Hawkeye, started watching Titans season 3. By the way, it was released for some weird reason. I don't know why it was released over here in the UK a few months actually after it was released in the US. But something I'm actually really enjoying about it this season, and I won't say too much just in case there's other people in the UK or even people in the US who haven't watched it. But I'm only about 3 or 4 episodes in. But I quite like the fact that we've got rid of all that kind of teen angst that was kind of happening in the first couple of seasons, especially in the first season. There's no teen angst, but they are still young. Do you know what I mean? It's a nice balance between not being children, but not being adults either. They're kind of, and I think that's why I got into it really. I was trying to talk about age, that sort of early 20s, between sort of 20, maybe late teens, and sort of 25. He's still young enough to be young Avengers, quote unquote, but without being children. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's where with Cassie Lang, we know she wasn't snapped from Endgame, which is probably going to make her a late teenager, probably at this time now when we catch up with her again. So there is some, these young Avengers teams, and we know Riri's going to be MIT college age. So, and Isaiah Bradley, he was his grandson.
Yeah, he seemed a little bit older, didn't he? Probably in his early 20s.
I thought he was a little younger.
I thought maybe like 16 years old.
Yeah, I thought
maybe.
he was like a high school student. So
Yeah.
Okay.
If looking at some of these teams are probably going to be age range, if they do a Young Avengers, probably 16, 17 to 25-ish
Yeah.
age range.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, if they bring back like Tommy and Billy, they might still be 12 years old or however old they were.
With multiverse, anything can happen
Yeah.
in that
true.
one.
Yeah, I think we'll get them back, but I reckon they'll skip ahead a little bit.
Yep.
I think they'll be late.
I think they'll be teenagers.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, back to Hawkeye. Sorry, I diverged a little bit there. So, and talking about Maya actually as well, we're starting to see her sort of shift from this kind of bad guy who's on a mission to sort of maybe sort of reevaluating what she's about and who she is and why she's doing the things that she's doing. And I'll put my hand up. I wasn't overly bothered about her character until this episode. I find her more interesting for some reason. I don't know why. I think because she's got that internal conflict. I was like, am I, is my whole life a lie?
Yep. Yeah, she's kind of gone from the bad guy to revengeful to now questioning her entire existence, knowing that something is very suspicious about her father's death. That definitely Kazi was involved. I honestly don't know if we'll see any more of Kazi or Echo in this series. They might kind of save that to continue in the Echo series that's coming up. But definitely see her kind of questioning her loyalties, where she lies, and the whole thing. That talk with Clint and Kazi was interesting, and then the talk with Maya and Kazi was even more interesting.
I think it kind of mirrors that like idea that Clint says like he was basically just a weapon, in this show, and I think she kind of like sees herself kind of as that way, like she's just been kind of like she was forged as a weapon, and then like chips kind of fell where they are. And,
yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, and once again, and we mentioned this, I think a couple of episodes ago, when we was just on sort of maybe episode 2 or 3, I don't know, and just saying actually the whole run, Matt Fraction's run was called, My Life as a Weapon. And that is pretty much, if you had to put a tagline on this show and you didn't know anything about that run, that would be a perfect tagline for this show.
Yeah.
So Clint as well, his development every week. There's more and more and more, isn't there? There's another, not necessarily another layer of him to peel back. I don't mean it like that, but I don't know.
More
I feel
depth. It like goes a little bit further in, because I think like we get lost in the idea of like a lot of these Marvel characters, because compared to a guy with like a bow and arrow, it's like you take like Iron Man or you take Hulk or you take Thor, it's like they're so lavish, they're like, like, so these heroes are massive, they fly around, they can knock buildings over, and then you've got like Hawkeye that shoots a bow and arrow, and so it's like it gives like a whole nother, it gives more layers to the onion, I guess, if you want to say that with Hawkeye.
Yeah, and then they're kind of not new layers, are they? But I think you had it right there when what you said there. It's just more depth.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily anything new that we didn't know. It's just confirming what we knew and just making it. I don't know, I don't know what it is, but every time I see him, I'm just like, yeah, I like you even more. Like every time I'm seeing it, the little conversation that he had with himself at the Avengers plaque, was just again, just simple, just the way that he took out his hearing aid and just chatted.
Well, that and the whole dynamic with the family too. We know that Laura, there's more that meets the eye with Laura. There's something deeper there. I hope we kind of get some answers there to see, was she a former agent? Is she the MCU version of Mockingbird at one point? Besides them being exposed as a family, what are they trying to protect there? Is there another agent we don't know about yet? Jack. And what's going on there? There's something still that I hope we get some kind of answer to in the finale with that. Did she from, did Laurel, did he rescue, or how about this? Did Clint have the same decision with Laura that he had with Natasha? And maybe she worked for the big guy and he kind of got her away from that. And that's that they fell in love and had a family type thing.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of thinking, is it kind of like a witness protection type thing, type scenario with Laura? I was thinking maybe it was somewhere down the lines. But talking of Jack, I mean, he's got... I think he's been totally played by Eleanor and Kingpin actually as well. I think they're probably all in the kind of circle, and they're kind of using him as almost like as a scapegoat. They're like, oh, okay, we'll sacrifice him then. That's fine. But she's certainly not innocent, is she, Kate's mum?
No, she's not. But I almost have the thought that is Jack the agent that Hawkeye is trying to protect, maybe. And that right now he's just undercover and that kind of stuff, or some kind of informant, because they have to go deeper with the whole swordsman thing. They've teased it enough to just make us kind of wonder. Hopefully it's not just some kind of red herring, and that there's more there with Jack, whether he's, bad, whether him kind of a past, whether he's a former agent or whatever. And
maybe that's why he wanted the watch as well, because maybe it's his watch.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe the identity that Hawkeye was talking about is tied to him, and it's not to Laura at all. That might be that kind of misdirection. We're all sort of led to believe that there's this Mockingbird thing going on, or whatever we think, but actually it's nothing to do with that. It is with Jack. They're laying these kind of breadcrumbs, and they're going, one of these is going to pay off.
Yep.
You just don't know which one yet. That's interesting. Yeah.
Well, they did pay off the uncle one. Let's throw that there now. At the end of the episode, we saw the grainy picture. Everyone kept saying, "Oh, it's a Mephisto moment." No, it's not. He's back. Kingpin's back, and they put that right front and center at the very end of the episode. So
And did he have his cane in that picture?
Yes, like he has a cane. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, he did. And gladly, happily or gladly, I'm glad, because there was a little bit of a rumor, wasn't there, about a few weeks ago, that if he was going to appear, there was going to chuck a little bit of CGI on him, and they was going to put him in a fat suit, and they was going to make him even bigger, and I was like, oh no, don't go silly. Like, it was perfect the way he was in the Netflix shows, and I was like, no, don't do that. It doesn't need to be like that in this show. Like, that's not what this show needs. And I was a little bit worried. And then when I saw that picture, I was like, phew, it's not like that. That's great. That's good.
Yeah, it's
Um,
not going to be one of those situations where it's like Spider-Verse, where he's like 12 feet tall and 10 feet wide.
Yeah, no, that's it. I do feel, I tell you what though, I'm rewatching the Daredevil show now. I'm only about halfway through the first season, and it is so good. It really is so good, and he's excellent, and it is brutal. The Netflix show. I'm just a bit worried that he's going to be too watered down compared to what he is. And do you know what? If it wasn't Vincent D'Onofrio, and it was somebody different, and it was different Kingpin, it probably wouldn't bother me at all. But because it's the same person, and because he looks like the same character that's played him in that show, it's almost like you expect him to be the same. It kind of the same. You expect the same sort of things, and you shouldn't, because it's not going to happen. He's not going to be. Let's put it this way: he's not going to be smashing someone's head in the door so much that it disintegrates, like he did in the Daredevil show.
Maybe not yet. Because there's rumor supposedly in this episode there's going to be a showdown with him and Kate Bishop. In this episode, he's supposed to be front and center in this next episode. So we probably won't see that yet. But as we know, the history with Echo and him in the comics, and once she finds out that he's responsible for her dad's death, there's some gory details there. And so I wonder if we'll see some of that explored in the Echo series. But it'd be interesting to see how they play this out. I'm hoping they break ties from the Daredevil season and just what's been the rumored soft reboot, so we don't have to worry about that, and that conversation can stop.
Yeah.
Because we know what the limits are on Disney Plus, with it being more of we know they don't put more of the mature stuff on Disney Plus. That usually goes to Hulu. So it'll be interesting to see how far they'll go as far as his character, even though it's rumored that Moon Knight will be a very dark and violent show, which is going to be on Disney Plus unless they change it at the last minute for Hulu. So it'll be interesting to see how far they go with Kingpin in this series, or it's on just in these shows in general. Like, how brutal will he be?
Yeah, I don't think he'll be that brutal. I think it seems like he's been operating for a long time as well, just as a in organised crime. Obviously Laura knows about him, about the big guy. So however old Cooper is, 16, 17. Hawkeye and Hawkeye's oldest son. He's been in the game for that long, so he's been around for a long time. So I think he might be again in a funny way. We've been talking about Clint and that kind of Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, Bruce Willis, I'm too old for this crap kind of situation. Is Kingpin going to be in the same boat? He's sort of getting a bit too old for all of that violent stuff now.
Think about how the snap might have impacted him too. Like, maybe he lost somebody during the snap that caused things to change there for those 5 years. So maybe that had an influence on this. Maybe, like, I hate to reference the Netflix shows, but like Vanessa, like if you take a Vanessa like character, she was kind of like his conscience in that show. She would kind of like point him in kind of like, I guess, a better direction, because he would get mad, lose control, and she'd kind of like calm him down a little bit. So I would assume, like, if he lost somebody like that during the snap, maybe he goes nuts and just loses any sense of kindness that he once had.
Yeah, potentially. I think we was chatting with Luke, who we had on for our Spider-Man preview and review episodes, and he was telling us about some rights problems, but some rights that have been going back and forward between Disney and Sony and Netflix and Fox, or whoever it is, I don't know. But basically, there was something along the lines of Marvel have got the rights to use Kingpin in shows, but not in movies. So, and we know that's not necessarily true for all of the Netflix characters. But is that going to limit what they do with Kingpin for the foreseeable future? So is he just going to be? Well, obviously just going to be in the shows, or at least just acknowledged, or just seen in the shows. Could he be acknowledged in the movies, or is it just purely a case of he's only going to be in the Disney Plus shows?
I guess it all depends on what kind of deal they have worked out, because we know they're reworking some of the stuff as it relates to Spider-Man moving forward. And so maybe they'll work out some kind of deal of what characters they can use in movies and what characters they can't use in movies. So maybe there's some of that. You were about to say something, Alex? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I could also see him being like probably a part of She-Hulk too. You know, like since she's a lawyer, Matt Murdock's a lawyer, like maybe there's some sort of like Wilson Fisk like legal team up there, like against Wilson Fisk. Like that's just the only thing I was gonna add to that.
It's talking about She-Hulk and talking about well, actually, no, just talking about She-Hulk, and this is just a completely sidetracking thing. I was reading some She-Hulk the other day, and there was Awesome Andy, who is the awesome android, and I didn't realize that he's picked up Molyneux before.
Yeah.
Because it was to do with living being. Like the enchantment on Molyneux was to do with living beings, and he's not a living being.
Same with Vision.
Well, yeah, exactly, yeah, but I don't know why. I tell you why. It's because I've started reading. Not started reading. I wanted to try and finish Secret Empire. Now, I never read. I started reading it and just gave up about halfway through because it was just a bit. It's not the best, but I want to read. Yeah, it is a hard read, but I mean, I've pretty much given away why I read it in the first place. But anyway, that something happens in that made me think about that, and then that got me thinking about who else has picked up Molyneux, and I was like, oh, and then I found out that Awesome Andy has picked up Molyneux. I was like, wouldn't that be cool to see him in the She-Hulk movie? The Awesome Andy dressed in his little shirt and trousers and blockhead. I thought that'd be quite funny. Anyway, sorry,
it could happen
because
there's rumors. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think it'd be awesome to add him in Armor Wars. Honestly, put him in there.
So supposedly there's a lot of cameos for She-Hulk, and there's some rumors about Daredevil as well being in She-Hulk along with Echo series. So it'll be interesting to see how they do it and how it all fits, and he could be showing up. So
nice, excellent. Let's see it. But back to Hawkeye. Once again, we've seen the sort of the guy. What's his name? Oh, the firefighter.
Yes, Griffs or
Grills.
Grills, yes. Cosplayer, yes.
I was trying to think of his head. We're yet to see these new outfits that he's made. They got delivered, but Clint didn't want to see them. He wasn't in the right frame of mind. So obviously they're saving that for this last episode. I think that's going to be a nice little moment when we get that sort of Clint and Kate in their new sort of Hawkeye outfits, their purpose-made Hawkeye outfits by the cosplayers.
It'd be interesting to see too how they do this going forward. You know, will Grills be a mainstay? Will he kind of be like Kate Bishop's guy in the chair type of thing? Because all of the people that are in the cosplay, they're firefighters, they're paramedics, they're police officers. So is that going to be one of their ways in to some of that stuff? It's be interesting because he's kind of been the one they keep focusing on. Yes, there's been other cosplayers they had in there, but he's kind of the main one they've been focusing on.
He's the one that said that Clint should stay with him instead of staying in a hotel, right?
Exactly. Yep. And they were sitting there feeding the dog pizza, and then he made them breakfast. When they got that call at the end about the big guy. So
that was a really cool moment when he rings the doorbell and he says, "Grills, is Clint? Can I come up?" And he's like, "Yeah, of course you can come up." He was like, "Yeah, definitely, great, like, yeah, brilliant, come up." That was cool. He could be, like you said, that character that sort of gels those sort of people together, and like he's Kate's guy in the chair almost.
Yeah,
to use a Ned quote. But I quite like him. I think he's quite good. I think I think sorry, excuse me. Clint and Kate have been so good as the sort of main, obviously the two sort of stars, the main people. I don't personally think at the moment any of the supporting cast has stood out much, except Grills. I've quite liked him, and he's not been on screen for very long, has he? But I've really liked him. He's been the one that's really stood out to me.
Yeah, I think Kazi has as well, but we also know Kazi's arc in the comics too. So, he just kind of stands out by himself. But yeah, Grills has been the one that's really stood out as a supporting character in this series.
Yeah, I think just a surprise as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew that Maya was in it, and we knew that Jack was in it, and we knew that Kate's mum's in
Eleanor.
it. And, we've known that these people have been in the show, but he was been sort of somebody that, for me personally, I've really enjoyed seeing him on screen actually, and his scenes have been fun. Yeah. I wouldn't necessarily say impact. Yeah, I guess they kind of have been impactful, but they've been fun. They've been fun. They've been nice scenes to watch.
Because you can almost say he's kind of helping keep Clint together a little bit, besides Kate in New York City, with his kindness and that kind of stuff, and the whole fight scenes. Like, come on, dude, you gotta let me win, and it's kind of that that buddy there that Clint needs besides Kate. They're supporting him in the city without his family.
Which it's funny. I feel like with these live action role players, like they've been in 2 or 3 episodes now. Like, they've been a pretty large part of the show.
And
a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, they're making their outfits, and they've stole back the
arrows.
The arrows, the trick arrows. So they have played a big part. But what you were saying, Joey, about he's being his buddy, it's almost like he's being his he's being his mate. He's being a kind of a real person for Clint to be a friend with, like a real, like just a normal friend. Like, okay, Natasha was Clint's friend, but she was still a spy that had been out to outer space. She's not just the guy down the road who we can catch a pizza and a beer with and just sort of hang about with, and he is quite a normal person, isn't he, Clint? And he's got kind of this normal sort of home life with this very abnormal work. But he's and Grills is like his normal friend, and it was nice to see Clint go to him and be normal again, like but just be a normal guy. And it's another way that we can relate to him. When you're stuck and you've got nothing, there's a problem that's happened. You'll go to one of your buddies, won't you? And you'll say, "Look, can you help me out?" He had nowhere to go, Clint, did he? So he sort of turns up and, "Can I come and stay with you for a bit?" Yeah, of course you can, because he's his buddy, and that's what buddies do. But it was nice to have that sort of normality, and just another layer of
the onion.
I'd say related. Yeah, another layer of the onion and another bit of relatability for Clint, for us. Which is, again, that's what I'm saying. That's what we were saying, Alex. He's just gone a bit deeper again. He's just done it again. And every time we see it, it's sort of, I like this guy. I like him even more now.
Do we think that since Clint is getting a costume made for him, that this means that he'll be around in the MCU for a lot longer? I know it's kind of a weird question, but
I could see him being that mentor Avenger. Maybe they break off to the West Coast Avengers. Maybe even he's like the person for the young Avengers. Because if you think about a lot of the OG Avengers, Stark is gone, Cap is gone. Sam is still pretty new in the group. Bucky's still pretty new as an Avenger. Rhodey is kind of the longest one, I guess, right now, besides Clint. Besides Thor and Hulk, but we don't know what's gonna with Thor and Love and Thunder, what's gonna happen there yet. We see that Banner is working with She-Hulk right now, and the rumored World War Hulk, so we don't know how that's gonna go on. So Clint is probably gonna be that piece, kind of like Natasha was the piece to get the Avengers together early on. I think Clint's gonna kind of continue that role going forward. That's how I see it.
Yeah, do you think he'll be that piece for a young Avengers team?
Yep.
He'll be the father figure for. He is a father as well.
Very Nick Fury-ish, kind of to the young Avengers, like how he was to the Avengers.
I can almost see him playing that, like, remember when Spider-Man forms teams, like through Fury for Shield, and he kind of puts Spider-Man in charge to kind of mentor the younger recruits, that kind of stuff. I could see Clint kind of in that kind of role. in between that and Fury, not in between Fury, but being partially Fury, partially that Parker role when he's bringing those new warriors in, type of thing.
Yeah, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
I'll tell you something that I really want to see, and after seeing more and more of Clint, and really, do you know what? He's probably maybe my second favorite, maybe my favorite MCU character now. I don't know, but anyway, after seeing more of him and him really rising up in my ranks, I just really, really, really want to see him and Hugh Jackman do an Old Man Logan.
Oh yes, yes.
Just how good would that be? Just a live action, just on its own, a separate thing. Doesn't it exactly the same as how Old Man Logan was? It doesn't have to relate to anything. Just do a separate movie, a Marvel Studios
or a series.
Yeah, series, whatever.
Yeah.
I just a one shot. It's a different universe, different timeline, exactly like Old Man Logan was. Just get Hugh Jackman and Jeremy Renner to do that storyline. Brilliant. I'd love to see that.
They could do that as a what if episode. Honestly.
Yeah, they could do.
Yeah, they could. Do you know what? Actually, even if it was, even if it was animated, I'd still watch that as maybe a longer feature length. A feature length what if,
an hour or something at least, you know.
A feature length what if Old Man Logan, or just call it Wastelanders or whatever, and have both of them, or I don't know, something. But that story, the Old Man Logan story, I think was brilliant, because it was just as much a Hawkeye story as it was a Logan story, wasn't it? So I really like to see that. But after seeing Jeremy Renner in this kind of, like I keep saying, that kind of, my back, everything hurts, I'm injured and I can't hear anymore, and all of this kind of stuff, I'd like to see the two of them do that.
So do you kind of think that Phase 4 is kind of the trauma phase, if you think about it? Because if you go back because what was WandaVision the first Phase 4, or was Far From Home the first Phase 4 thing?
Far From Home,
was it? I think did. Oh, it might have been. I don't know, Alex. I don't know. I think
I have to double check. But even if Far From Home is Phase 4, you do see that there's trauma, because if Phase 4 is, you see the trauma from London and that kind of stuff. But it's kind of the trauma phase, and even seeing No Way Home, which I'm not going to get into, the trauma in that movie as well. And I was talking to my wife about it, and she calls this the Disney princess phase. Saying that all the Disney princess movies, they have to go through some kind of trauma to have that kind of metamorphosis or that kind of change become better. And you're seeing that with all these shows. Look at WandaVision, which is most likely going to continue into Multiverse of Madness. Look at Loki. Look at Falcon and Winter Soldier. Look at Black Widow. Even Shang-Chi, both parents, and the whole challenge there. Shang-Chi, sorry. And then it's looking at Hawkeye and looking at No Way Home. This is kind of like that trauma series. Wakanda Forever is going to be trauma. We don't know what Secret Invasion or the other shows yet, but it seems like so far it's been trauma. The Disney princess phase, basically.
So I think let's use that Disney princess, or just a princess sort of analogy. The generally how it goes is, when we start seeing a Disney princess story, is that they're already a princess, they're already kind of established, so they've already gone through that origin story, which is what we've seen in the Infinity Saga. It's like the origin story, wasn't it? And they've got to this point just as like everything's as good as it can get. And then obviously Endgame was that tipping point where it starts the trauma. And then this trauma started, they're getting kicked down, they've got nothing, but now they've got to rebuild back this kind of this status to get back to where they were before. And maybe that's what's happening with the Avengers and with the heroes, the Avengers teams. They've had this, they had their origin story. They got to where they were. They were this great team. They saved the universe and all of this, but now they're a bit destroyed, and now they've got to build back their status to get back there again. And that's what's happening. It's a rebuilding phase, isn't it?
Yeah. See, I feel like Phase 4 has another big theme, and that's like identity. And I feel like with every one of these shows, you're gonna see, like with WandaVision, it's about like her thinking about how she identifies herself without Vision. Captain America, it's like all about that mantle of in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, like who's going to be the next Captain America? Who do we identify? You've got Loki, where we've got variants now, like really questioning how we identify with just one singular character, versus many different versions.
Well, Loki questioned himself too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now, with even with What If, I mean, What If like makes us question how we identify these characters with these stories, where it's like, you take one small little change to a character's story and it completely changes the character and it throws them off on like, an entire different life. So it changes how you identify. And then with Hawkeye now we've got like a story where it's like, we know Hawkeye will probably pass this mantle on down to Kate at one point and he'll step away, but we just don't know when that's going to be,
I think the going back to the identity thing, I really like that, because Loki first sort of brought my attention to it. I'm not saying it didn't happen in Falcon and Winter Soldier and
WandaVision,
but Loki first brought my attention to that, because I think, do you remember me saying when we was doing the episodes that it was very much, and it is very much about good and bad, and what's good, what's bad, am I good, am I bad, am I a bit of both? And to be honest, this is similar. Hawkeye is similar in respect, but it's obvious he's a good guy, but he doesn't know. He's like, no, I've done some bad things, and yeah, but that doesn't make you a bad person. He's put on the Ronin suit, yeah, but there was context there, and you're a good guy. Kate's like, you're a hero. And he's like, yeah, but I can't really see it, and I don't want to be a hero. I just want to go home. So there is this whole, identity thing. I really like that, Alex. Yeah, that's a really, really good point.
Speaking of identities, Eleanor Bishop, is she Madame Mask? How does she fit in here with Kingpin? What's her tie to Val? Because now that we know from seeing Black Widow closing credit scene with Val and Yelena, Eleanor making that phone call, and then Yelena popping up. Did Eleanor call Kingpin and Kingpin is a tie to Val? Or did Eleanor directly call Val herself? So
yeah, I'm going to go with that. I'm going to go with, speaking of this whole situation, just thinking about trying to put it on a timeline. So Yelena was blipped.
Yep.
Which we didn't know until
now,
last week. So when did she build the relationship with Val? Was it between 2016 and 2018? Or was it in the last year, like since she come back and until what we've just seen? So I should imagine that what we saw her at Natasha's grave was maybe around the same time, or just after Val got the phone call from Eleanor. I reckon Eleanor phoned Val, and then Val's gone, right, I'll go and get Yelena to go after him. That's the best option for me.
And one thing to think about too, we know, I don't think Natasha was coordinating the whole Black Widow rescue thing, where they were going out and curing and rescuing other Black Widows. So was Val the primary on that? Is Val more of like a mercenary type person and not really either good or bad, but kind of just someone who's the highest bidder type situation? Interesting to find that too, because we saw her show up in Falcon and the Winter Soldier for Walker, but that was interesting. We saw her in Black Widow. Is she, what is she in this in this whole mix of things? Right.
So why would she only go to one Black Widow? Why wouldn't she want more than one?
Exactly.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
So there's still some yet to be seen here of what she is and how she ties into the bigger picture. And hopefully we start getting some more. Maybe this week we'll get some answers around that. Maybe we'll get some more once Secret Invasion comes around. But it's interesting to see where she fits in, because it's still mysterious at this point. I'm sure there's a big picture they're working here, but if there's so many ways this could go, it's kind of hard to tell. Maybe she tied to Kingpin. Who knows?
Yeah, I think we've spoken about this in the past, haven't we? About how many storylines are going on at the moment, and it's really hard to kind of, pinpoint. Like, if you would have said this 6 years ago, you could probably tell how most of the story is going to go. Yeah. I mean, I say that it was a lot easier. There was a lot less avenues for the stories to go. And now there's about 20 avenues that the stories are going down at the same time. But I think that going back to what you were saying about Eleanor, I don't think she'll turn out to be Madame Mask. I don't think and I just don't think it's worth it. I don't think it will mean anything. But there's certainly more to her than not more to her than meets the eye. I think it's quite obvious actually that she's certainly up to something.
Could one of them be the Vanessa maybe for Kingpin?
Mm-hmm. Maybe. I feel like Kingpin's kind of playing the board here. Like everybody thinks that they're working to maybe they're all working for Kingpin and they're all thinking that they're like doing what he wants them to do and that they're doing their part and they're betraying this one over here and betraying this one and trying to do this, that, and the other. And it all turns out that at the end of it all, like it's all Kingpin's plan, that he was basically like getting them to remove each other off of the board. That way he can win the game.
Because
they're all his favorite. They're all his favorite.
Yeah.
You're my favorite. No, you're my favorite. No, you're my favorite.
Or until you mess up, you're my favorite type of thing.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's what he did to Maya's dad.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
He killed him. So
yeah, because I'll go out on a limb and say that Fury's not tied to Val at all at this point. Just knowing that what we saw in Black Widow, her sending Yelena, I don't think Fury would ever send anyone after Barton to kill him, unless there's a more storyline there that we don't know about.
Yeah, no way. No, I totally agree. Yeah, there's no way that, and if he is, then Val's playing. But then Fury would know. Fury knows. No. If he knew that someone was being sent after Clint, he would get involved. There's no way that he would let anybody go after Clint. Not a chance. So I don't think Val and Fury are related, are connected.
Yeah, connected at all. Yeah.
But I do, just going back to what I was saying about that timeline, because how I find time like really interesting and how it all squeezes together. Like I said, I'm thinking that Yelena has been working with Val before and after the blip.
Yep.
And I do think that Eleanor contacted Val, and then Val's then gone to find Yelena and got Yelena to go after Clint. So I reckon that scene at Natasha's grave is only, he's probably
perhaps a phone call. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So it's December sort of time, end of December. And she's going after, that's when that ties in. And I'd really like to see, and I think we've spoken about this before, haven't we? This kind of end scene of Clint at Natasha's grave. I think it kind of feels like it's leading up to that as well. He kind of speaks to her. He likes speaking to her. He spoke to her at the sort of memorial site. And I think it would be a really nice bit of closure for him on the Natasha subject to go to her grave and actually, put that to bed a little bit.
My last thing I'll say about Val, and I'll stop bringing this up, is that I think maybe that she was the person to fill the power vacuum after Dreykov was killed. That's where I think that's where she's at. Just thinking about it.
She's just somebody else that's just like maybe no affiliation with him. Like just like, oh, I want the Black Widows to do my bidding now. Type of thing.
Yep. There was a power void. She was the one that got was the front to get the to fill that power void, and no relation to Dreykov, but she's the new Dreykov basically at this point.
Which is maybe where, like we said, where her and Yelena cross paths to begin with.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. So next week, or Wednesday, what do we think we're gonna get?
I'm hoping we get some answers around Kingpin. Hopefully we can put some things to bed about Kingpin and these Netflix characters coming over to the MCU, especially since it's been rumored as soft reboots. The biggest thing I kind of want to see is something with Jack. I'm hoping that we get some. He's undercover agent. They know each other. Some kind of more swordsman tie there, because it almost seemed like a throwaway if they didn't do anything.
Mm.
I'd also, maybe closing, because we know there's usually a closing credit scene at the end of these shows. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something more for Echo to kick off Echo, or the rumored Daredevil series as a closing credits.
I reckon you're right there about the Echo nod. I think that's what we'll get as a closing credits. Alex, what would you like to see this week, mate?
I think we're definitely going to see one of those scenes where it'll probably be like a little brief 5-10 minute scene where it'll be Yelena and Clint talking about, like, you know, Natasha's death and what actually happened and how impactful, because, you know, we've seen like how both of these characters were individually impacted by Natasha, and I think out of characters in the MCU, these two characters are probably two of the that have had Natasha impact them the most out of probably like anybody else. Um, because one is like her sister, one is, you know, the one that brought her to Shield and everything like that. So I kind of think that that's going to be like a not only a large part of this episode, but that'll be probably like something to tug on our emotional heartstrings a little bit, you know. I also think that this is probably going to be one of those things where they're going to leave Echo's story open ended. I feel like where it'll be like maybe she just kind of like something happens and she just kind of like escapes and fades away in the background of the episode, and then like we don't see her anymore until her episode, and then or excuse me, her show, and then maybe like her show one day is like her redemption story, you know, for what she's done. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just my thoughts on it.
Nice.
And real quick before you start there. And speaking of the whole Yelena and Barton thing, you know, we kind of saw some things change there at the end of the episode with her texting Kate to say this who hired me. So we kind of already see Yelena in that gray area. And I won't be surprised if that's where the episode kind of starts off, where they all three meet up and we get things settled at the beginning of the episode, and then Yelena's gone.
Yeah, I mean, Yelena's like looking for a reason to not kill Clint. Like she's like she looks at Kate and she sees that Kate like really values Clint for some reason, and she wants to know why that is. So she's like really kind of like, you know, tell me why. Why should I not kill him? You know, it's kind of her attitude on this.
Yeah, I think I'd really just like to see from wherever it comes from, whether it comes from that conversation that you was just mentioning there, Alex, like a potential Yelena Clint. If Kate's involved, she can be involved, but that conversation about Natasha and about that whole relationship, you know, between all of them and Natasha, or whether it comes from that closure that I was talking about, at Clint at Natasha's grave, a scene in that ilk. From wherever it comes from, I'd really like to see a little bit of, like I say, a bit of closure for Clint on the Natasha front, because he's obviously really still hurting about that whole situation. And yeah, I'd like to see him be able to put that one to bed and move on, because it's a demon that he's got. And yeah, I'd like to see him be able to sort of move on from that. So how we get that, I don't know. But I think if we can see him resolve that one, that would be good. But I tell you what, I definitely want some more trick arrows. I want some more bros. I want some cool costumes. And I want some wicked stunts as well.
Well, speaking of trick arrows, there still wasn't pictures of him working on trick arrows that we haven't seen yet. So I wonder with the trick arrows they got back from the police station, if we're going to see something like that of him fixing or rebuilding some new trick arrows.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I'd like to see. I'd like to see all of that stuff, because that's the stuff that we all really live for, and it, you know, those kind of explosions and stunts and fight scenes. So that'd be cool to see some of that stuff as well in the show. But
boomerang era.
Yeah, the boomerang era.
There's got to be one in there. That's, I reckon, because we've, like Jarian said, we've seen that scene where they're design, like, you know, fixing arrows or, you know, working on arrows. I reckon he sort of looks over and Kate's doing something over in the corner, and he's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "Don't worry, you know." You don't need to know. And then all of a sudden she's got a boomerang arrow in the fight at the end, and she's like, "See, boomerang arrow." Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. Like, to see that.
You know, be a pretty cool end credit scene is with leading into Echo, is that we see Kali start putting on the clown makeup on his face, and it's kind of just going, you know, we see him in the mirror putting it on, and that's it.
Yeah,
you know, because he's just dropped because she knows, and she's breaking off from him, and basically they've been together since they were kids. That karate scene in the beginning, you know, he was the one that got taken down. So it's interesting to see that them, you know, kind of just have some kind of tease along those lines.
Is he gonna come back for the Echo series?
I don't know. I would think so because he is a villain, and so I would think they would, bring him back for that. But we also know too how Marvel put some things out there and then that doesn't revisit them. So I don't know. I'll have to see.
I'd be surprised. He doesn't even, he might not be a good guy, but he doesn't seem particularly evil or particularly villainous. Like he seems like he does care about Maya.
And that's push him over the edge. Once that relationship's broken, that bond is broken, maybe that makes him go crazy or push him over the edge or that type of thing.
He just doesn't strike me. He hasn't got that look. The actor hasn't got that look of that kind of, person who could be nasty.
Because I was surprised if in Echo series they don't have any more on her time with the tracksuit mafia and with her dad and that kind of stuff. We had more flashbacks or how she came up, more that kind of stuff. I'd be surprised if none of that's in her series.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, like Clint talked about him basically being in that position in the tracksuits for, years or whatever. Maybe part of that has to do with the fact that he's hit his ceiling, if you will, with the tracksuits. And he, is just kind of like at that point where it's like, if you take, Echo and you take Kazi, like, and you look at those two, like they always kind of looked at her, especially in the show, like as a child prodigy and fighting and everything like that. And he was kind of like always like second fiddle.
Yeah.
So, maybe this is one of those things where this like feeds into like maybe some sort of like disagreement here where, like he doesn't want to be second fiddle anymore. So, like, I don't know.
Or maybe that Kingpin realized that she's starting to turn on him and Kingpin sends Kazi to try to kill her.
Yeah.
Who knows? We'll have to wait for Wednesday to find out. And sadly, as well, as far as we know, Wednesday will be our last new Marvel content until potentially May. I mean, I don't think
MCU content, not Marvel.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, MCU content. That's what I meant to say. Sorry, our last MCU content until potentially May. I mean, I don't see that we won't get a show between New Year and May. I'm sure that they might sneak something in, but who knows? It might not be. We might end up having 5 months with no MCU content, which will be the longest stretch we've had since the pandemic.
Well, there's been some chatter about Moon Knight, and so I could see Moon Knight being released in Q1 of next year.
Yeah. I'm fairly confident that we will, but as far as we know at the moment, this is the last bit, so we'll have to relish it. Anyway, guys, let's wrap it up there, and we'll get back to we'll see you next week to talk about the finale of Hawkeye and any catch up on some news as well.
Yeah, I'm behind the news, and there's a lot more news that came out, so I need to record an episode and as well for that.
Yeah, save a couple of good bits for next week as well.
Yep.
Wicked. All right then, guys. Well, look, it's been a pleasure as always. Remember to hit the like button and rate us and review and share with any friends. And obviously, if you're not on our Facebook group and you've got Facebook, what are you waiting for? Get over to Marvel D&T Evolution, get on that Facebook group, and enjoy the chat. All right, guys. Thanks very much. We'll catch you again.
Have a good one.
See ya.
Why don't you tell them about the time we faced them
All right. Well, as I remember,
at Avenger headquarters?